So we talked about you're not sure if you saw Monica in Las Vegas, but let's talk about when you stayed at Al Birdsong's house. Did a conversation come up while you were there? And again, this is July 2016 in Las Vegas. Did a conversation come up between you, Al Birdsong, and Robert Baker about the defendant and her husband?
Yes.
What was that?
He talked about he was messing with this woman, and then he started asking questions about how to get rid of evidence, and then
Who was asking that?
Baker. And I remember him saying like about remember him saying like talking about, it's like we talking about a murder. I was like, oh. And I don't remember like all the details of that.
Can you describe then, how did this conversation begin?
Birdsong and Baker were talking at first. I wouldn't just sit there and they said, hey, I want to tell you something. I don't think that's how it came up.
Okay.
They typically have conversations without me often. It's something I probably walked into. I remember.
Sustain.
Do you recall if you walked into a conversation or entered into a conversation when Baker was already talking to Birdsong about something?
Yes.
And then what was your participation in that?
He started asking me like how much I weigh.
Who?
Baker. He started asking how much I weigh. I remember hearing he could probably do it. I was like, do what? He said, I'll tell you later. I might have a job for you later. I don't know.
Again, counsel, you can clarify.
If you could also, is this Baker talking?
Yes.
At this point, okay, continue.
I don't really remember like
Okay.
how all that really came about. But
At
I know
this-
that they were talking about it.
At this point in the house, you knew that Baker was involved with someone,
Yes.
and he began talking about that female,
Yes.
and the topic of the conversation was a job that he may want you to do.
Yes.
Did he say anything about that female and what she wanted?
At the time, she said she don't like him. I'm sorry. Baker's telling this ally like she don't like him, so she doesn't. She don't want to be with him no more, but she wants him gone. So I was like, oh.
Did you know what they were talking about when Baker says to you,
It's overruled.
she wants him gone?
I had a clue, but I was like, I'm not smart, and so they're gonna have to elaborate.
Did they elaborate?
Baker did.
What did he say?
Baker said she wants him gone.
Okay.
She wants him dead.
Did the conversation turn to, between you, Birdsong, and Baker, how to do it?
Yeah.
What happened?
I remember him talking about shooting a man.
Who said that?
Baker did.
And what was,
And then the response was, no, that would be too loud.
who responded?
Birdsong responded, and then they both agreed that would be too loud. And then they mentioned like stabbing, and then hit him right in the jugular, quick. And I remember him saying quick.
And which one was saying that?
Baker said that. And then they both agreed. Birdsong and Baker both agreed, like, yeah, hit him in the jugular, fast and quick. Well, Birdsong said that. And Baker, yeah. Sorry.
Okay, clarify who said what, please.
Birdsong said you could probably hit him in the jugular, quick and easy. And Baker said, yeah.
During this time then, did you see or hear Baker on the phone with anyone?
He was always on. He's texting somebody, but I don't know who.
During this conversation then, do you know, if you know from your own point of view, if he was talking or texting with the defendant while this conversation was happening?
I wouldn't know.
Did you see him texting
Yeah,
a lot?
he would text a lot.
During this time frame, did you have any conversations about using burner phones?
At some point, the burner phone topic came up. I just don't remember when, but it came up.
So what was the topic?
I remember hearing we can get burner phones because they can't be tracked.
Now, this conversation is occurring. Are you under the clear impression now that it is to kill this woman's husband?
Yes.
Is your opinion then, based on what Baker and Birdsong are talking about, that the wife wanted it done?
Yes.
As formed, that would be sustained.
Did you have an opinion who wanted it done?
Premature overruled.
Yes.
Who?
Monica wanted it. The wife wanted it done. I'm sorry.
At some point in the conversation, or do you realize that it's you that they want to do it?
Yes.
How did that happen?
You mean? What do you mean?
How did the conversation go from talking about how to do it to it focusing on you're going to be the one that does it?
I remember saying, I'm about to go to bed. I was like, okay. He said, okay. Remember he came up, he's like, I want to talk to you for a second. I was like, what's up? He's like, do you think you could do something like this? I was like, probably not. And then he was like, okay. And he closed the door. And then the next morning we rode back, which I think that's when I actually met her at the gym. We drove back to LA. And I remember him saying, I want you to move back. Something to that effect when we were riding back. I remember that.
Move back.
From Alaska to LA.
Did he say why?
I miss you.
That drive back to Los Angeles, did you continue the conversation about planning this murder of the defendant's husband?
Overruled.
I don't think so.
Did you talk about it again while you were in Los Angeles before you went back to Alaska?
No, I don't think so.
Did you bring it up again?
No,
Why not?
I didn't want to.
Why didn't you want to?
Because I was hoping that, like, yo, this isn't going to happen. You're not really trying to do this. But then when I got back to Alaska, phone calls started happening. I mean, every now and again I get on a three-way call between myself and Mr. Birdsong and Baker, and he's going out of town. Can you fly in? Are you fast enough?
Who's
Do you
saying
think
this?
Baker? Baker's asking these questions. I was like, I don't know.
So timeline, wise, when you got back, you did Las Vegas, you came back to Los Angeles, you ended up, you believe it to be that night at the defendant's house, which is when you laid on the couch, right?
Yes.
Earlier you said that you didn't know she was married, but by this point you knew she was married.
At this point, yeah.
Okay.
Like officially, like married versus like together.
When Robert Baker said to you when you were leaving, remember the layout of the house, had there been any previous conversation about where the plan was to commit the murder?
I remember in the talk so that she could leave the door open. There's a back door to their bedroom. You can go in the back door and come out. I remember that happened.
When did that happen, that conversation?
I want to say over the phone.
Okay, just to back you up. While you're in Las Vegas, you have one conversation about this for the first time, correct?
Yes.
During that conversation, did you ever talk about or hear Baker and Birdsong talk about where they wanted the murder to occur?
I remember them saying like it has to be in the community or some sort. Got to be out.
Okay, my question is when Baker says, remember this layout, in your mind, was there a plan that it was going to be in the house at that time, the murder?
No, if I recall, I remember he said, remember that layout, because that's when they started talking about the bedroom aspect of going in the middle of the night. And doing it while he was sleeping.
That was another conversation?
That was another conversation. I don't know when, but I know that was another conversation.
After Las Vegas?
Yes.
Okay. So, at some point after you were at the house that night, did you fly back to Anchorage then the following day or within a couple of days? After you came back from Las Vegas, you went the next night to the defendant's house, or that same night, did you fly back to Anchorage?
A couple of days, probably a day or two later, maybe.
So when did these three-way calls then start?
Maybe a couple months after, 3 months after, September, October.
October timeframe?
Maybe.
During those months in between, were there any conversations about this plan to kill the defendant's husband?
Yeah.
What was that?
They were still planning, and I remember Baker still asking me like how much I weighed, things of that nature. Just about my physical attributes a little bit.
These are phone calls from Baker to you?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Court reporter.
Thank
And
you.
is it before the three ways? Is Baker calling you, asking you questions then, or talking about still this plan that he wants to put into motion with Birdsong and the defendant?
Yes.
Okay. Was Birdsong talking to you also, before we get to the three-way phone calls, was Birdsong also talking to you individually, following up on this plan?
Yes.
And what was he talking to you about?
Just the aspects of being in and out.
What does that mean?
Objection.
In and out meaning
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
meaning I remember one of the plan was like to still like go to the house. No. I think at this point they were talking about him being out somewhere at night and then doing it then quick and then getting out of there.
Around October then, the three-way phone calls, was that you, Baker, and Birdsong all on a call together?
Yes.
Okay.
Those
Who
are
was
the calls.
initiating that phone call?
Usually Baker would.
And then on those, well, how many phone calls did you do that were three-way phone calls?
I don't remember.
More than 5?
Probably.
More than 10?
Maybe. Yeah.
Were the topic of these three-way phone calls all about planning the murder of the defendant's husband?
Not all. Some of them were just to check in, seeing how I'm doing, seeing what I'm doing. They were very curious about what I was doing. And I would tell them, like, working.
What do you mean they were curious about what you were doing?
I mean, like, they wanted to know, like, exactly what I was doing and how I was doing. Like, what are you still working? Are you? It almost seemed like, if I remember correctly, it almost seemed like they were making sure that I wasn't like backing out. I don't remember taking all their phone calls all the time too, because I was working. I do remember like a few missed calls from them a few times, well, from Baker.
Did you ever express to them that you wanted to back out?
I didn't say it directly. I gave hints. It's like, I'm working a lot. I don't know. I can't. And they started, well, Baker started like initiating, like try to figure out when you can get some time off. I was like, I don't know. I'm working a lot.
Now, by the way, during all these phone calls, was the defendant ever on any of the phone calls?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, and did you ever speak directly with the defendant at any time, directly with her about killing her husband?
No.
So was your communication with and through Baker?
Yes.
Was he relaying what she was telling him for the majority of the time?
Yes.
So on these calls then, specifically, did you talk about these three-way calls? Did you guys talk again about ways to kill the defendant's husband?
Yes. Just, I remember saying where he's going to be. And
What does
again,
that mean?
He's telling me this stuff at this point.
Who's he?
Baker.
Is telling you where he's going to be. And this is so around the October timeframe, right?
Maybe November now.
And what did he tell you in regard to where he's going to be? What does that mean?
Said he travels a lot. So it might not go down. I was like, cool.
What's the last part?
He said it might not go down.
Did Baker tell you that the defendant had sent him her husband's itineraries when he traveled out of town?
Objection, leaving.
Overruled.
Did Baker say what?
Did Baker ever tell you that the defendant had sent him, Baker, her husband's itineraries when he went out of town?
I don't recall him saying that, but he knew when he was leaving. And he was scheduled.
Sorry, there's no
So-
question pending, sir.
I'm sorry.
Did Baker tell you when the defendant's husband was out of town?
Yes.
Was there ever a plan or a conversation between you, Baker, or you and Birdsong, or you and all three of you together, you, Baker, and Birdsong, to possibly kill the defendant's husband when he was out of town? Was that ever a conversation?
I don't remember.
So let me interrupt you at this time. Let's take our morning recess for 15 minutes. The admonition applies.